Hello, my name is Iris, and today I will be talking about who is displaced by disasters, what do they experience, and how individuals can make a change in the context of internally displaced people by disaster in a developed city context. Thank you, Oxford Migration Studies Society, for this opportunity to talk. In January of this year, I visited an evacuation center in northern Japan that opened after Typhoon Hagibis slammed into Iwaki City in October 2019. Wind speeds of 225 kilometers per hour and torrential rain sent 30,000 people at peak time into evacuation centers. When I visited, 3 months had passed since the typhoon landed, yet 178 people still remained inside these school gyms. Today, I would like to share some episodes of stories of what I've heard from some internally displaced people. This is the home of an elderly couple, waiting for their temporary shelter to be decided so they can move out. They don't have enough space or equipment to properly hang their laundry, so they place it around the perimeter of their living space. This is a living room of a 4-person family. The son is in primary school and is preparing for his secondary school exams, but he has no private space to study. His younger sister wants to play when she comes home, but is told to be quiet because the others will be disturbed. But they feel lucky, because it was only recently, when most of the others moved out, that they were able to request space, even for a living room. Until then, they shared a 4x4-meter space with the entire family. I also had the chance to be able to talk to this lady in the photo. She has been here since the day of the typhoon and told me she has not had a good night's sleep since. She's used to sleeping in complete darkness, and it worries her that the toilet is so far from her bed. Children are loud, and she's always cold. She doesn't really know what shelter means anymore. Is it a physical space that barricades you from the outside? Or should it be more than that? In 2016, a 7.3 magnitude earthquake that hit Kumamoto, Japan, killed 216 people. 200,000 people flooded into school gymnasiums, and no one was ready to manage that many people. In the absence of adequate sanitation practices and proper leadership, sickness and disease spread fast. 900 people died inside the evacuation center. That's 4 times more than that of the actual earthquake. During Hurricane Katrina, there were more than 100 sexual violence cases reported from inside evacuation centers in Houston, of which 93.2% of victims were women and girls. During disaster times, law enforcement is stretched thin and the vulnerable are not protected. The assaulters in these evacuation centers often go unpunished, and few victims receive proper help. Unfortunately, these disasters are here to stay. With the exacerbation of anthropogenic climate change, we will see a future with more and stronger disasters. This doesn't just mean more deaths, injuries, and loss of infrastructure. This also means more houses destroyed, more evacuation orders, and more people needing emergency shelter. On top of that, rising sea levels due to global heating will quite literally send entire cities underwater. And when that occurs, what will then happen to those living in the sunken city? It is so important for us to realize as a global collective that there is no one on Earth today who is bulletproof from these climate risks, and if we want to minimize future displacement, we need to rethink who gets displaced, why they get displaced, and how they should be supported. When we imagine someone who is displaced, what are we wired to picture? When you type in displaced people on Google, this is what comes out. Why is it that all of these photos are of people in developing countries collecting in masses in what looks like very rural, if not barren areas? Why is it that we do not see more photos like this? If we want to find a global solution to a global issue, we need to first change our perception of who can become displaced. Many of us affluent people in the West never imagine ourselves to become internally displaced. But perhaps it's time for a wake-up call to realize that we too can also lose our homes. And when we do, wouldn't we want all of the help that we can get? So what happens if we do get displaced? What help is available to us at the moment? If we take the developed nation context, right now, all official emergency shelter is provided by local governments or, depending on the city, international organizations such as the UN and the Red Cross in the form of school gyms, stadiums, or makeshift tents. These conventional emergency shelters are often unsanitary, undignified, and unsafe. My stories earlier in this presentation are good examples of a typical emergency shelter. You may have noticed that these conditions are far from ideal. And knowing what you now know about the susceptibility of each of us in becoming a displaced person, would you want to evacuate? Or would you send your family to evacuate into these spaces? Lucky for us, these are not the only types of emergency shelter that exist today. We have seen throughout history that regular people like you and me, who were previously uninvolved in disaster response, come together in a time of need to offer free rooms for evacuees. These can be people who have just one extra room in their house, or hostel and guest house owners, even large hotel managers with several spare rooms. These offerings are often advertised through ad hoc posters, individual websites, or online ads. But the commonality between them all are that they offer their own personal or commercial spaces out of kindness for free. And when the rise of internet and technology, companies like Facebook and Airbnb have stepped up to provide platforms to help connect people offering help with people who need help. However, the types of information provided on these platforms and the method of communication to secure shelter is all over the place. For an evacuee to find shelter that would properly help them is at this moment very difficult and confusing. So what if we made it easier for all of us to help each other during a time of crisis? What if there is a way to lift some of the burden held by displaced people by offering them better shelter, giving them an opportunity to reintegrate into society and build a community inclusive to those displaced and those who are not? This is my current mission, to provide a platform where displaced and non-displaced people alike can come together out of kindness and easily help each other out. My current project, Daruma, hopes to improve the safety, well-being, and dignity of displaced people through offering better emergency shelter in the form of already existing spare rooms and homes. I hope also that by increasing interactions between displaced and non-displaced people, I can raise awareness on the true realities of internal displacement. Solving a global problem needs a global solution. But before we can start thinking of the solution, we must change our mindset. We need to unlearn the stereotypes of displaced people and think of them simply as another human, another neighbor, another friend. If we can all think that way, there will be a change in our narrative. Thank you.